This is Chuwi's latest laptop, which is the Corebook Pro. They sent this out to me to review, and all the opinions expressed in this video are 100% my own. They're not approving it, and I'm not being paid for this review either. So this model has an extremely dated chipset in here. I'm talking 2016 chipset here in 2021. Quite dated and very low end, as you'll see later on with some performance tests that I will be running with this one. So it has the Core i3, the 6157U, with Iris 550 graphics, 8 GB of DDR4 RAM, a 256 GB SSD, which is SATA 3, and I'll show you the exact speeds of that one. But we can upgrade it too, which is good. There is a little flap on the bottom. If you remove that, you can install an NVMe drive or a SATA 3. The main drive sadly is not NVMe, it's only SATA 3 with that. So the weight of this particular laptop, it's about 1.36 kilos, which is very good. And the thickness is not bad, around about 18 millimeters. You can see closed, it is thin. Now to open it up, one-handed hinge opening, no, we cannot do that. And the hinge so far does feel stiff and good. I know that Chuwi have had issues in the past with the reliability of their hinges, loosening right up and causing the screens to crack and things like that. They claim it has been fixed, but I'll only know after 1 year of using this model, of course, and I've only had it now for a couple of weeks. So the screen, this one is a 13-inch IPS panel, 2160 by 1440. That has an aspect ratio of 3:2. Now, according to my measurements with my Spider Pro 5, measuring the screen, it tops out at 260 nits, which is not the brightest out there. Now, it has reasonably good colors. The color reproduction measured of an sRGB of 99%, an NTSC of 65%, Adobe of 75, and P3 also 75%. Now, when you look at the screen with just the lights off and a complete black image, you'll notice that, especially with my unit, that on the upper right-hand side, I'm getting a lot of light leakage with this panel. It's not really too much of an issue. I only see it if I look at a black image, which I never really do anyway. And then just above the screen is a HD webcam. It has rather poor quality, and here's a sample of it. The frame rate on this one is not very good. It's only about 15 frames per second. It seems a little dark too, considering I've even got my bright studio lights on. So not a really good webcam, unfortunately, that's within this Chuwi Corebook Pro. And then for the ports, on the left-hand side, we do have a Type-C port that supports power delivery, although I'm having a few issues with this one that I need to turn it off first, plug in the cable in my power delivery power supply for it to actually work. But it comes with a DC charger, and this is rated to 65 watts, and that's all you get included in the box with this particular model. And then on the right-hand side, you will find a Type A USB 3.0. This powers external hard drives without any problems. Micro SD card reader, the cards sit in flush. They only operate at USB 2 speeds, so not particularly fast. And 3.5mm out and in. And then our keyboard on this one, being a 13-inch size screen, they didn't have quite as much room as the 14-inch GemiBook Pro, which was the last one I reviewed from them. So this keyboard to me is not quite as comfortable. So it's backlit. The backlighting isn't as bright either as the GemiBook Pro, which is a shame. It's all right, but it's not evenly distributed. We get about 1.6 millimeters of key travel. The key travel and feedback feels okay, but I don't like the location of the power button, which is where the delete key is. So sometimes you can accidentally tap this. There is a way around this, of course, to set the power button to do nothing when you press it to stop you from accidentally putting it into sleep. Now the touchpad is of a relatively decent size. It's not the biggest I've seen and smaller than the GemiBook Pro again. And it does support Windows 10 gestures. Finer movements seem to be okay. When I do type and tap on it with the hardware left and right buttons, it sometimes rattles a little bit. So the overall build quality of this laptop I would rate as being, it's fairly decent. It's not bad. We've got the plastic palm rest, the alloy round, and the hinge, as I mentioned, feels quite stiff. But what about the internals? What are they using for the cooling of this Core i3? So we have a dual copper transfer heat pipe in here with a relatively large fan. And the fan noise is quite good. We don't hear the fan normally. It will come on, it will go off, and most of the time the fan is off, especially on battery. you'll basically almost never hear it unless you do something demanding. The fan noise is not very loud and it's very hard for me to capture a sample of it. And the lid here is made out of metal as well, so giving this a little bit of a flex because it's a fully laminated screen I've used with the glass. It doesn't really move about too much. So applying a bit of pressure on the top of that, it presses in a little, but again, I don't think that's too much of an issue. The screen should not, and I don't think it will press up against the keys marking it or anything like that. And the Corebook Pro has 4 little speakers that are on the bottom downwards firing. Here is a sample of them at 100% volume. They sound okay, but they could be a little bit louder to my ears. So this BIOS is completely unlocked. This is great. A lot of manufacturers will lock us out of a lot of these advanced settings because some of them could potentially end up causing this laptop not to be able to boot at all. So it is great that we've got this. Now, not a lot we can really do because of the fixed clock speed of this one of 2.4 gigahertz. So you've got power management there, CPU configuration. You can adjust and change C states and all that sort of stuff if you're into that. And there's other things to tweak in there with the thermal configuration, chipset as well. And the memory configuration, not a lot we can change. So it is in dual channel. This is using Hynix chips, both of them. So 2 chips there with the 4 gigabytes each, giving us the 8 in total running in dual channel there, of course. And then the boot menu, you can change the boot order of that too, if you needed to do so. Here we are in Windows. So this does come with Windows 10 Home, not Pro. It's version 1909, so a little dated. Of course, you're going to have to run Windows 10 updates. 8 gigabytes of RAM installed. None of the RAM seems to be dedicated to the GPU. I thought they normally would have like 200 megabytes, but that doesn't seem to be the case there. And you can see the CPU. So this is, yes, very dated. So 2016. It's the 6000 series, the 6157U. With the Iris 655 graphics. There's a little bit more information about that particular chip right here. So that is the Skylake, of course, discontinued. Chuwi must have got a really good deal for these very dated chips. And you'll see it's got 2 cores, 4 threads. Maximum turbo is 2.4. In fact, there is no turbo. It's just that. The base frequency, it does not go up or down or anything. Well, it will go down to 800 megahertz at idle, but that is the top speed. So very dated chipset in a laptop that, well, it's only just come out a few months ago, so not really amazing. So the SSD that I showed you for the internals when we took a look at that it is a Kingston 205 gigabytes free on first boot, and the speeds, say to the free speeds, as expected, mean nothing amazing here. And then our wireless adapter, so that is the Intel AC 7265, again, recently dated this one, and it's Bluetooth 4. The funny thing is the Book Pro that I reviewed that has the Intel AX200 Wi-Fi 6 card, much better than this one, yet this Pro model, the slightly more expensive model, gets the more dated wireless chip. Alright, let's focus on the general performance. What can you expect out of the Corebook with the only 2 cores at 2.4 gigahertz? Well, Windows feels okay. The speed of it just getting around. Sometimes the animations can be a little slow, I have noticed. The start menu will sometimes lag a little bit depending on what you're doing. So it doesn't handle multitasking too well. But what about the video playback? Video files, demanding ones that I always test out. So 140 megabits per second, 4K, 10-bit HEVC. It is meant to have now with this one native decoding, but it doesn't seem to be native to me. That is very poor playback of 4K. It's really laggy and it takes a long time if you skip ahead to catch up, and that hasn't even caught up yet. So that is really disappointing. Now, why are there borders? That is because I'm recording in 16:9 aspect ratio. The screen here, of course, is 3:2 aspect ratio. That is why we have the borders either side there. That's just how it's going to be. So if I try to play something like 4K, 60 frames per second, same thing. It is going to be terrible. That's just, yeah, it's laggy, it's horrible. It's just not going to work. So it's not good at all for video playback. Now, what about spreadsheets, things like that? So documents, a little laggy at times. So scrolling through this, it is all right. You can make your edits and things. This is a rather large one, 859 pages. So there's a lot of pages in this. It's a test file that I always test out. And yeah, you can do your edits and move images around and things without being too laggy here. So this is strictly light computing only with this weak dual core chip. And what about benchmark? So Night Raid. That's okay. The graphics score, that is actually pulling out faster than the Gemini Lake. So the Celeron J4125 I reviewed in the Gemibook Pro, that one gets a lower score there. But the CPU score, multitasking, and because it's only 2 cores, that is actually lower there. And very low score here for Geekbench 5. So not very impressive. I mean, it is what it is. It's a low turbo, it's an old chip, so you cannot expect a lot performance-wise. And how is the performance in something like Chrome? Can you run a lot of tabs? We've got the 8 gigabytes of RAM in dual channel, and it is running at 2133 megahertz. So this is dogs that I'm going to search. I already have searched. And I'm just going to go through now and open up a whole bunch of tabs. And we'll see. Is this going to really hurt the performance? Get some video files in there as well. So they're in there, the video files. And that is about probably where I would go with tabs open, continuing on this. You can see that swapping between them, that's all right, as long as the pages aren't too heavy. Now, where's that one with the video? Okay, YouTube's a little slow to load in here. And I've got our stats for nerds. I'll play this at, well, the maximum. Oh, the maximum is only 720p with this one. Okay. So if I type in a 4K demo file, see how fast that is going to be. So this performance is, it's okay. It's okay considering the chip. But I do expect now a lot of drop frames. Okay, the buffer health is not exactly the best with my connection. And it still is not at 4K yet. Oh, there we go. Starting to play now. So 2 frames drop. Not too bad, but it seems a little slow. No. Okay, that's actually running fine. Skippy head. What about full screen though? That's when it's going to struggle. Okay, that is a little slow. There we go. Dropping frames as I suspected it would. Quite a bit. Look at that. It's continually dropping frames there. So for media playback, video playback, files like this, not recommended at all. So the Chrome tabs here, yeah, that's fast enough. That doesn't seem too bad. Gaming performance now. So let's have a look and see what can the Iris 550 do. Used to be okay for integrated back in the day, back in 2015 when it was announced, back 2016. So yes, very old, of course, as I pointed out at the start of this video. So we're around 100 frames per second, or around 90s, but look at that, dipped right down to 20 frames per second just then, which is not good. And now again, a bit of lag, definite lag coming through. I don't think it liked that smoke grenade at all. So if someone throws through a flashbang right now, I'm in a bit of trouble. Let's see if I can. Oh, I think there's someone out there. Yep, there he is. Oh, he got me. Didn't kill me though. Oh, another big frame dip. All right, should I just go charging out, see if I can get him? Throwing a grenade. Ah, it lagged and I had my finger on the trigger. So no, not good gaming performance. It completely just froze up on me. He had me. He definitely had me, of course. And onto our thermals. So it gets a little bit hot on the surface of the keyboard and around just above it. That gets up to about 41 degrees. It's warm to the touch. Now the internal temperatures, 72 degrees Celsius maximum is what I'm seeing. That is after almost 2 hours of constantly stressing it out. And that is at least 45 minutes of gaming as well to get to these temperatures. So it does get a little bit warm, but these thermals are quite good. And considering the fact that it's only just 2 cores, 4 threads, and that low clock that it has, or 2.4 gigahertz, it's normal really that it's not getting up to say 80 degrees. And I did power up Linux Mint on this laptop. It runs just fine. So the wireless is working, the screen brightness, adjusting that right now, that is working fine. And the volume controls in audio also working there. So not a problem, runs well on this laptop. This is the latest build of Linux Mint. So what is my verdict on this one? All round, I think it's a disappointment because of the chipset mostly. That they should have put something more potent in there. In 2021 now, and they're going with a 2016 chipset in this. Even though it does have the Iris graphics, it doesn't matter. The video playback, if you intend to play HEVC and you want to play, for example, VP9 codec files, it's not native decoding and it is quite choppy. It's poor as I showed you. That's disappointing. And overall, the system performance does seem at times a little bit laggy. The dual core is struggling, especially with that quite low now, especially for today's standards, of only 2.4 gigahertz flat out speed. That's all it has, although it will lower down to, with the speed step, down to about 800 megahertz, but it will not go any higher than that. There is no turbo, which is quite disappointing. Battery life is, well, it's average. You're looking at about 5 hours, really at best, depending on your screen brightness, of course. The screen isn't bad. I mean, it does have the Adobe coverage of 75% and around 260 nits. It's not the best I've seen, but indoor use, it's still fine. A bit of light leakage, which isn't bad. So screen okay. The speakers, they're all right. They could be a little bit louder, but for Chuwi speakers and their laptops recently, they have improved them a little bit, which is great. And then the backlit keyboard, it's good to type on, but I don't like the location of the power button being where the delete key normally is, which is a little bit of a hassle and takes a little bit to get used to there. But the touchpad as well, that is okay. But when I press and tap on it, it sometimes has a bit of a rattle noise to it. So all up, as a recommended laptop, very, very difficult for me, just for light tasks. I really think so. Otherwise, check your local market, see what is out there. And for me, the Corebook Pro that I've also reviewed in the channel, it's almost about the same kind of power. The battery life on that one is longer. It handles video files much better. In a way, it's kind of better because it's a quad-core too, but it's still not fast and still just for light computing. So do check out my review of that one. It's another Chuwi laptop. And I do hope to see you back in my next up-and-coming reviews. Bye for now.